Hi there, Kris from Stone Age Gamer here, and welcome back to Stone Age Gaming. This is it. So we've been, last couple of weeks, I've been running through my history with how I got all of my various game systems, Nintendo game systems, and leading up to the Switch 2 launch, which, as the day I'm recording this, is exactly 1 week away. Today is Thursday, so next Thursday I will have the system in my hands, and I'm very excited about it. But this is the last chapter, so this is going to be covering Wii U and Switch, and actually a little bit of a bonus story about the Switch 2, because that's already been a pretty interesting development. So, thank you very much for everyone who's taken this journey with me so far. Thank you very much for watching and sharing all of your stories. And here's the last chapter. Enjoy.
The Wii U's issues were many, and as the internet is wont to do when it comes to negativity, they're all very well documented. From the terrible messaging, the flat-out stupid name, the third-party woes, to the giant noose that was the expensive gamepad, there isn't much to be said about the Wii U that hasn't been said to death. It's my understanding that the majority of folks who actually own one today love it, but while it's honestly home to some of the best games released during its generation, it never caught on with the gaming community at large. In fact, it's Nintendo's worst-selling home console to date. So why in the world is it one of my favorite gaming systems of all time? It all comes down to the story of how I got it. As you may recall, it was through an unbelievable stroke of kindness that I wound up with a 3DS to call my own. But when it came time to start preparing for the Wii U's launch, I couldn't expect one to just fall in my lap like last time. If I was going to get one on launch day, I would need to figure out how to make it happen myself. But life was determined to stand in my way. Aside from our finances still not being stellar, my wife Karen and I had started talking seriously about having kids, and if that was going to be our new reality, tossing $350 at a new video game console simply wasn't a responsible thing to do. But where I was more or less okay with holding off on the 3DS, the Wii U was a horse of a different color. Nintendo games were finally going to be in high definition. A new Smash Bros. Was on the way. Runner 2 was on the way. There were games coming both at launch and down the pipeline that I was very, very excited to try. I thought the gamepad showed remarkable potential, and I was absolutely pumped for the system's release. I even got to go to one of those special preview events in New York City and try it out early, and was sufficiently impressed with what I played. But I tried my best to keep that to myself, because every time I thought about adding a kid to our lives, there just didn't seem to be room for a new video game system too. After mulling it over, I made the decision not to get one at launch. I was going to wait until after the whole kid thing happened and then figure out how to fit a Wii U into our budget. I had plenty of old video games to keep me busy, and it was the responsible thing to do. I told my wife my plan, and that was that. It's a decision that I was proud to make, but as the launch date grew closer, it certainly wasn't the easiest one to live with. However, as I've learned time and time again over the course of my life, I should never underestimate the awesomeness of my wife. What I didn't know, that was almost immediately after I told Karen about my decision to not buy a Wii U, she decided that that was not okay. Without me knowing, she hopped on Facebook and sent out this message to a group of my closest friends. Gentlemen, we have a problem. Today, the launch date and pricing were announced for Nintendo's new console, the Wii U. Due to our financial constraints, Kris has made his peace with the fact that not only is this the first Nintendo console in a long while that he won't be getting on launch day, but he believes he won't be getting one at all. Frankly, this is ridiculous and cannot stand. I want to make sure that there is a shiny new Wii U under the Christmas tree for this guy. He works really hard and few things would make him happier, so I'm asking if you were planning on finding a Christmas gift for him, buy him a Wii U. Okay, just kidding. I'm taking up a collection. It goes on from there with lots of, well, nice things that I still have a hard time wrapping my head around. Funds quickly came in to cover the console, and the decision was made to change it from a Christmas present to launch day, because they thought I might just break down and impulse buy it myself, citing, quote, "It's Nintendo and it's Kris. That's a dangerous combination." They weren't wrong. After lots of planning, pre-ordering, money gathering, and keeping me off the scent, the deed was done. The console and a few games were in hand, and it was time to melt my brain with kindness. I worked my shift at the comic book store on launch day with a cloud of sadness around me the whole time. All I could think about all day was how much I would rather be at some sort of launch party or sitting on my couch playing the new Mario game. But instead I was working. I knew in my heart I was doing the right thing, but I was bummed for sure. I got in my car and headed home knowing that at least I had an awesome taco dinner to look forward to, and prepared for an evening of not obsessing over the fact that I didn't get a Wii U. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary when I pulled into my driveway, since my friends had all parked away from my house as to not arouse any suspicion. When I opened my door, I saw several of my friends sitting on my couch, and I was completely surprised. I immediately put together that my wife, in an effort to cheer me up about not getting a Wii U, had arranged a game night with my friends, and that was quickly confirmed by my friend Mauricio, who suggested we play some Smash Brothers, Four Swords Adventures, or whatever I want. And then after a brief pause, my friend Tony said, "Or we could play this," and he pulled a brand new Wii U out of a bag he had next to him. I lost my mind. I honestly don't even remember what I said or did for the next few minutes because in my head, I was the Nintendo 64 kid. I was overwhelmed. I still can't believe it happened. They got me a Wii U Deluxe model with Nintendo Land, New Super Mario Bros. U, Scribblenauts, and Zombie U. We played Nintendo Land until we physically couldn't anymore. We played some Mario too, and it was glorious. Seriously though, Nintendo Land does not get the credit it deserves. That game is an absolute blast and still one of the best local multiplayer games I've ever played. I still remember that night as one of the best of my life. I don't know what I did to deserve friends as good as these, but I will never forget that extraordinary act of kindness. So, why do I love my Wii U? I could talk all day about the amazing games I played on it, all the fantastic local multiplayer parties I had over the years, or even the pure joy of playing The Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker HD with my son asleep on my chest as a baby, the gamepad on my coffee table, and a Pro Controller in my hands, charting the sea to my heart's content. But honestly, it's that story. That there were so many people willing to pitch in so that I could get the new Nintendo system on launch day. It's one of the nicest things anyone's ever done for me. In the grand scheme of things, it's just a video game console, but if I think these videos have illustrated anything, it's that Nintendo games mean a lot to me, and thanks to this story, the Wii U will always be one of my absolute favorite systems. The night of the fabled Switch presentation, there was a lot of things going through my mind. You can hear all those rantings on the Stone Age Gamer podcast, episode 135, The Switchening. It's a two-parter, and it has aged hilariously. This has solidified. Showing this game at this point has solidified that the Switch will not even reach Wii U's numbers.
Nope.
This system is gonna be a failure. Either way, no matter how mad or confused I was about 1-2 Switch, there was a brand new Nintendo console on the horizon, and I needed to have one on launch day. So as soon as the presentation ended, I staked out several websites waiting for online pre-orders to go live. I didn't want to go with GameStop because as a company, it's a degree of evil that I'm not overly fond of, nor do I have any desire to give them any of my money. I used to work there, and if you did too, you probably know what I'm talking about. And Amazon was out straight away because I wanted to go somewhere and physically pick up the unit on launch day. The last thing I wanted to deal with was being at the mercy of the United States Postal Service while the rest of the world got to experience Nintendo's latest console. I started with Target, but nothing was showing up on their website, so I switched over to Best Buy. Trouble was, they wanted the full purchase price up front. Not having an abundance of dollars at the time, I decided to wait and see what Target would do. But I was already up way too late and I had to be up early for work the next day, so I decided to attempt to convince myself to sleep and try again in the morning. When the sun came up, Target was taking pre-orders, albeit with no ship-to-store option, and also for the full purchase price up front. Best Buy offered in-store pickup, but by this time their pre-orders were sold out. Assuming I'd be able to change the shipping option later, I placed my pre-order with Target. After about a week, ship-to-store for my Target pre-order was still not an option, and the ship-to-home option meant I wouldn't have my system until at least a few days after launch. I started looking for other options for pre-ordering the Switch, and much to my chagrin, the only one available was Walmart. I am not a fan of Walmart. To make matters worse, you had to physically go to the store to do the pre-order. After some careful consideration, I decided that getting my Switch on day one outranked my distaste for the big W, though I still held my hope that Target pre-order would come through and I could cancel this one. When I went to Walmart to place my pre-order, it was a mess. It took no fewer than 4 different employees and managers to figure out how to ring up a pre-order in their system, and I still have my doubts as to whether or not it was done correctly. It went in the system like a layaway, which seemed odd to me, but I trusted them. I had a receipt that allowed me to get a Switch on launch day, no matter what, so that was better than nothing. As launch day approached, Target's customer service had given me a litany of different answers, none of which meant that I would be able to pick up my pre-order in-store on launch day. I missed out on Best Buy's second wave of pre-orders, so I resigned myself to following through on my Walmart pre-order. Since my nearest location was open 24 hours, I called to ask if they were going to do a midnight launch. My first call went as follows. Something like this. I'm paraphrasing. It was like a decade ago. Me. Hi, I have a Nintendo Switch pre-ordered at your store. When exactly is it going on sale? Hold on. March 3rd. Click. Hello? Yes, they hung up on me. And when I called back immediately, nobody answered. Fun times. I called again the day before the launch day and was able to get confirmation of a midnight launch, and while I wasn't exactly filled with confidence, I started putting together my plan. A little after 10, I decided to grab my 3DS and go get myself in line. Sure, my system was guaranteed, but I also really wanted a Pro Controller to go with it, and I had a feeling that was going to be potentially challenging since they were rumored to be in very limited supply. From the moment I stepped into Walmart, it was a grade A cluster cuss, and no one, neither customers nor employees, had a clear idea of what was going on. My first stop was the electronics department, where I tried to find somebody to talk to about the Switch, but nobody I found had any idea what I was talking about. They sent me over to the pickup counter in the back of the store, which also happened to be where I placed my pre-order. There was a handwritten sign explaining that if I didn't have a pre-order, I should go to the customer service counter at the front of the store. If I did have a pre-order, I was to wait back here. So I sat down on a bench, whipped out my 3DS, and waited. After about 5 minutes, a woman came out and started unpacking boxes of Switch consoles. She saw me sitting there and asked if I was there for one, and I explained that I was. I had a pre-order and I was doing what the sign said. She told me that they were selling them all up front and I had to get in line with everyone else being the 20 to 30 people that were already standing in line. I asked if I could get a Pro Controller to go with my system, and surprise, surprise, she had no idea what that was. Noticing a pattern here. Said everything was going to be up front, and they'd sort it out there. I walked to the customer service counter, feeling less than confident that I was going to be leaving with what I came for. As I took my place in line, it seemed that even though I was going to get my system, the Pro Controllers would likely be sold out by the time I made it to the front. This certainly didn't fill me with joy, but I've never had a positive Walmart experience before, so why should I expect things to change now? After waiting in line for about 15 minutes, that same woman who sent me to the line approached me, sent me back to the pickup counter because that's where the pre-orders were being sold. So I rushed back in hopes of being the first in line. I expected a flood of other folks to follow, but nobody did. I kept looking around, but it seemed that I was the only pre-order customer they had. I was still nervous about getting a Pro Controller, though, so I kept looking around to see if I could find an ever-elusive, helpful Walmart employee. I eventually came in contact with a very tired old man who clearly didn't want to be there. He hadn't worked in electronics for a few years and had no idea what any of this stuff was. He did tell me that he was glad he wasn't working up front, though, since the store had only about 20 units to sell, and there was a whole lot more than 20 people waiting in line for the system. Eventually, a family who I recognized from the line up front came to the back counter accompanied by an employee. They had a good spot in line, and they had asked an employee to bring them back to look at the games and accessories. I took my chance to ask again about the Pro Controller, and boy am I glad I did. They brought up all the accessories they had, and I took my pick, snagging a Pro Controller and a copy of Zelda for my very own. The customer asked what the Joy-Con grip was, and since the employees had no idea, I started answering everyone's questions. The old guy in particular was very grateful to know even a little about what the heck he was selling, so that was fun. Then they boxed it all back up and took it up front. About 20 minutes before midnight, 2 more people showed up with pre-orders and got in line behind me. They were nice folks, and we chatted about how excited we were to get our systems. And then about 5 minutes before midnight, they started getting my transaction in order. When my fellow pre-order customers saw my Pro Controller and Zelda, they asked about getting the same. Everything else had already been brought up at the front, though, so these poor guys, who'd gone to the trouble of pre-ordering, were SOL. They would have to get their systems here and then wait in line back up at the front to see what was left. Nice job, Walmart. I felt bad, but at this point I wanted to get the heck out of there and go play my Switch. But no, that wouldn't happen for another solid 20 minutes. The old guy had absolutely no idea how to ring up a pre-order. He pressed all sorts of buttons, scanned all the barcodes, and even took my money to pay off the rest of my purchase, but he couldn't figure out how to get the Switch out of their inventory, even with the help of another employee who eventually turned up. All the managers were busy dealing with whatever fresh hell was happening up at the front of the store, so they took one look at the other increasingly angry pre-order customers, bagged up my Switch, gave me a receipt that said I paid the thing off, and said, "Just take it." I grabbed my Switch, Zelda, Pro Controller, and 4 jars of Old El Paso taco sauce. For some reason, that Walmart was the only place that carried it at the time, and it's freaking delicious, and got the heck out of there. I finally had it. It took a lot more effort than I wanted it to, but the Switch was mine. I spent the next hour at home fiddling with it, and I was a very happy camper. I set up my account, downloaded the Snipper Clips demo, picked an avatar, and sat content that while things didn't go exactly as planned, it all worked out in the end. I didn't dare turn on Zelda though. I knew that if I did, I wouldn't be going to sleep that night, and I had taken the following day off work to dedicate to playing that game alone, and that is exactly what I did. So why do I love my Nintendo Switch? One word: accessibility. I've never stopped loving video games, but my ability to play them as a young parent and workaholic had diminished over the years. Switch changed that. The system didn't have a startup screen or anything flashy with its menus. I put a game card in, I started it up, and I was ready to go in seconds, just like the old cartridge days. I could also take this thing everywhere, so when I was playing Breath of the Wild and it was time for bed, I grabbed the Switch and continued in bed. When I wanted to play Doom 2016, but I couldn't find time when the kids weren't around, I played on the TV when the kids went to bed, and then brought the Switch to work with me the next day and played in my car while I was on break. The system was literally the culmination of every weird gimmick Nintendo had been futzing with since the days of the NES, and it played like a dream. It was such an easy platform to play, it made it so that I could get more game time in than I could in ages, and that non-stop cavalcade of great games to play sure as heck didn't hurt. I've been making a whole other video series about the games that define the Switch generation for me, and it's filled with some of the best games I have ever played. It reignited my actual connection to games in a way that I was afraid I wouldn't get back to, and I will forever love it for that. From playing Mario Kart with my wife while waiting for the previews to start in the movie theater, or easily syncing 4 controllers up to play Mario Party with the kids, its genius lies in its simplicity. It has become my favorite gaming platform of all time, and I cannot wait to see what happens next. And that brings us to the Switch 2, a system that as of this recording I do not have in my hands yet, but I will, and that's already something of a story in and of itself. In the past 8 years, life has thrown my family numerous curveballs, as it has for everyone, but this time around, I had known the Switch 2 was coming for quite some time, so I prepared as best I could by stashing small amounts of money away for over a year. Since I really didn't know how much the system was going to cost, I put aside as much as I could every month for my Switch 2 fund. By the time the price was revealed, I had managed to save up a little over $1,000, which meant I could get the system, an extra Pro controller, and maybe even a game or two with plenty left over. Then it turned out, I didn't actually need any of it. Let's rewind a bit. My co-host on the Stone Age Gamer podcast is a wonderful man named Dan. He loves PlayStation almost as much as I love Nintendo, but he also tends to have even worse luck than I do when it comes to general life and its expenses. So when the PlayStation 5 came out, and he told me it just wasn't in his budget, I was reminded of what Karen and my friends did for me with the Wii U, and I got right to work. I reached out to our listeners and formulated a plan to raise some funds to get that man a PS5 because gosh dang it, he deserved one. The mission was a success, even though the actual process of obtaining a PS5 at the time was a nightmare, and he was eternally grateful. Then, just last year, Dan was diagnosed with cancer. Knowing that he was going to have to spend a bunch of time in a chair doing chemo, I decided it was once again time to raise some funds to get that man a Steam Deck. I'm not super fond of asking our listeners for money, but there was no way in heck I was going to be able to get one for myself, and I needed to do something to help him out with the whole cancer thing. And some of our listeners felt the same way, so a Steam Deck was acquired, and Dan beat cancer. For reasons that will forever elude me, those same listeners who helped me get Dan a PS5 and a Steam Deck decided that they wanted to get me a Switch 2. Citing that Dan shouldn't get all the free stuff, they put together a GoFundMe and raised a tidy sum of money. The thing is, they already knew I didn't need it. They knew about the money that I had saved up. I talked about it regularly on the podcast. Regardless, on April 18th, a day where I just so happened to be having a particularly crummy morning, they reached out to me on Discord and said that they had a surprise for me. There was a link to a GoFundMe with this message on the page. If you're reading this, there's a good chance that you know our good friend Kris Randazzo, either from real life or through outlets such as the Stone Age Gamer podcast, from his excellent videos on the Stone Age Gamer YouTube channel, or possibly from his writing in Nintendo Force magazine. Either way, you probably also know that he is one of the best human beings out there and also one of the hardest working. Once again, it goes on from there. That's not the easiest thing for me to read because it's nuts. And I cannot stress this enough. I did not solicit this in any way. I talk about the troubles of my life on the show all the time, but I also have made it pretty clear that things have been relatively stable lately. This was just kindness for kindness' sake, and I'm still blown away by it. I called them up on the Discord to thank them as close to in person as I could, but I'm sure I wasn't able to properly express my gratitude. I am very fortunate to know so many awesome people. Anyway, in terms of actually obtaining the Switch 2, things have changed in the realms of pre-orders since the launch of the Switch, and I was prepared for the Switch 2 situation to be a bit of a mess. They already delayed the pre-order date once, and the fervor for this thing is pretty nuts. Also, I was going to be out of town on pre-order day, so I would be trying to get this done on my ancient, barely functional laptop and my phone. Pre-orders went live at midnight on April 24th, and a bunch of us in the Stone Age Gamer Discord and my co-workers at Nintendo Force magazine were up all night trying our luck at various outlets. It was stressful, but as the night went on, I think everybody eventually got what they wanted. I actually managed to get through at Walmart first, but what I really wanted was Best Buy, because they were doing a midnight launch. Thankfully, my patience paid off, and at some point in the wee hours of the morning, I snagged the Mario Kart bundle, a Pro controller, and a camera from Best Buy, and my friend Greg is going to buy my Walmart pre-order for me at cost. Everybody wins! Again, the night started out pretty intense as we were all scrambling to get our orders in, and we were all afraid the scalpers were going to get them all. Target kept canceling stuff, people were kicked out of queues, but every time somebody made it through, we all celebrated together. Looking back on it now, it was an extremely fun night with some great people online. By the time this video goes live, the Switch 2 launch will be only a few days away. I'll be heading out to Best Buy after I put the kids to bed to wait in line to get my system. I am excited, but also there is a sort of sadness to this one because I really don't know how many more experiences like this there's going to be. The industry is changing so quickly that the traditional notion of a video game system might be going away in the not-too-distant future. Same with retail in general. So while on one hand, I'm for sure way too old for this kind of nonsense, I'm excited beyond belief to go get out there and make some new memories. The Switch 2 is still very much a mystery to me, but if it really can deliver on just being the Switch but better, I'm going to be one happy camper.
Alright, well, that's it. That's everything. That's how I got all of my game systems. My Nintendo game systems. And I really loved telling these stories. The Wii U one in particular is that one, like the Nintendo 64 one, back when my mom got me the N64, and this Wii U one where my wife put together this crowdfunding thing to get me a Wii U on launch day. Those are probably my favorite stories of the bunch. They're just unfathomable acts of kindness. And this new thing with the Switch 2, the listeners on the podcast getting together to just kind of help me out in life, just because they're nice people. I love and appreciate every single person who was involved in that. And really, thank you everybody who's watched it and shared your story so far. It's been so much fun learning how you all got your game systems, and reading those comments has just been a blast. So thank you very much for sharing your stories with me, and thank you for watching. If you liked what you saw here today, please follow, comment, like, subscribe, share, and let me know, how did you get a Wii U? Did you get a Wii U? How did you get your Switch? Was there an interesting story involved in that? And did you wind up with a Switch 2 pre-order? Are you as excited as I am to get the Switch 2? Because a week from today, I'm going to be playing Mario Kart World, and I am very jazzed about it. And that stupid welcome tour thing, I'm going to be playing that too, because I'm a sucker. But yes, that is it. Thanks again for watching. On behalf of all of us here at Stone Age Gamer, keep playing games.